Okay, so I made some changes to the way the rabies certificate is going to be generated, which I'll show you. So basically what I'm going to send you are two files, which is the spreadsheet and then the master certificate. So launch the vaccination spreadsheet. And you'll kind of notice I broke things up kind of similar to how ASM does it. So behind the scenes, ASM has several different tables, and that's where the information is stored. And because information is spread across multiple tables, it didn't make any sense to, kind of do things directly from the spreadsheet as far as generating, as far as entering in data and everything else. It get really confusing to do it. So what I did is I created a form behind the scenes, and I attached that to a macro. And so to do that, you do Control T, and that launches a form. And just looking at it quickly, it's similar to what ASM does, or is, what they present, but it's all kind of condensed on a single page. And I've already added in some animals, which you can see here. If I could show the names, but I guess names is kind of spread over there. But anyway, so these are existing animals in the spreadsheet, and some of them I have filled in information, some I didn't, and etc. So let's just go about adding an animal, showing how that works, and then printing stuff off, updating animals, all that. Okay, so these are the existing animals, and they're identified via their name, their species, and the owner. Figuring in multiple people could bring in princesses that are cats, but they probably don't have the same last name. So that's basically how you'd identify existing animals in the system. To add a new animal, you click this plus button down here, and what that does is it nulls everything out. It erases everything. And these are kind of internal for me, this animal ID and vaccination ID. They're ways for me to identify unique animals. And so these are populated for you based upon time, essentially. And so if you keep on clicking the plus buttons, basically it just generates new values for these. And you can ignore that, it doesn't matter, but that's what those are. Okay, so to enter in information, let's do, okay, I'll do Ripley. And let's say that's the only thing I add. So I do a little bit of verification behind the scenes to make sure things make sense. So if you try to add the animal immediately, it's going to say that you need to fill in at least these three things. And the reason why you need to fill in those is because that's what's used to populate this thing over here. But you're likely going to have a lot more information than this. So some of the stuff could be left empty if you wanted to, and some of them could be unknown, whatever. So let's just do male, and these of course are already filled out as far as the values in here. So let's say Ripley is a cat, and actually Ripley was a female, and the breed was domestic short hair. This is kind of the problem with this, is just there's so many breeds, but oh well, too bad. And I should say that if I switch it to dog, then you'll get different breeds. Base color, she was gray, and yeah, so not exactly a fan of this, but whatever. And she was pretty small. And weight, I don't know, I think she was 3 pounds, 9 ounces when I adopted her out. Date of birth, I actually do know that, but let's say you didn't know that. Similar to ASM, you can do an estimate. Now, ASM gives you a field and it will do it, but here, basically, you click on the estimator, and she was, she was about 6 months old. Now I have to do this in years, so that'd be, well, she is about 6 months old, and that would be a half a year old. So I'll do a get date, something like that. I don't care, whatever. But anyway, basically, whatever value you put in here. So let's say she was actually older. So let's do 3 years. So she is 3 years old, and I click OK. You'll notice that this 8-10-2014 populates over here. Okay. She was altered. You could enter in the altered date. She was microchipped, and similarly, if you roll over, you'll see what these are for. So the date the animal was microchipped, and then the microchip number. And so if you don't know that, but you do know a number, you can enter in a number. Markings can be whatever you want. If you know something in comments, here we could had butterfly larva. And if you want to do new lines here, you do a Shift Control Enter, and that gives you a new line. And hey, okay. So now, as far as owners go, you can choose an existing owner. The idea there is that people might bring in multiple animals when they do this, but you can also add a new owner. So let's do a new owner. It basically brings up a new form, and let's do I'm Barack Obama. Address, city. If you know all this is great. So I'm just going to create it there. Actually, that is one thing, is I haven't made it easy to edit the owners. All this other stuff you can edit after the fact. The owners, I haven't done that yet, and so I did fill in some information, so the only way you can change that would be to go to the spreadsheet, to the owners, and add that information in there. So I might fix that by tomorrow. Okay, so the vaccination, let's say this is all we have right now. We just want to enter in this information. So what I can do, or what I need to do, is I need to add that animal into the spreadsheet. So what that did is it added a new entry. You might have saw it pop up in the background, and now Ripley is in the system. And this is done in alphabetical order as opposed to the order when the animal was entered into the system. The idea there is that, somebody says, oh yeah, I need to look up Ripley. Probably easier to look up Ripley if this is alphabetical, and so that's why it is. So now what I can do is I can go back there, and all that information is in there like I entered it, and now I can do additional things. One thing I might do is pre-populate these with today's date and then a year out. That seems to make sense to me. Let's say I don't know the manufacturer's day. I'll give it a number, and I don't have the rabies tag. Administering vets, I'll show that. Right now I can't show the spreadsheet because basically when you pop up this form, it locks the spreadsheet. So I can't show you the vets column, but right now you're the only one who's in there. And so I'll click your name, and I'll say that's great. Now what I can do is I can update, and what that will do is I'll do that. Update, it just updates it and gets it ready for adding a new animal. Now if I go back to Ripley, all that information I just did was there. Now what I can do is an update and print. Now update and print is I really want to make sure that if you change things, let's say I go in here and I did a date for this, but I just click print, and then you moved off this form, then you lose that information. So actually what it does is it first takes all this information that's on the form, it updates the spreadsheets, and now it goes ahead and generates the certificate behind the scenes. And so what that does is it fires up Word, and it fills in the information, and there you are. And so obviously, since like that owner information, like I said, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't fill in. So it's just a bunch of empty fields right now. Shelter ID, that's never going to be filled in because there isn't a shelter ID or code or anything in the database or in the spreadsheet. Actually, I think there is, but I never fill it in. I didn't add any markings, so what are some of the ones? Oh yeah, since the date of birth was an estimate, I do it like ASM. I said that's an estimate, and then there isn't actually an age column in the spreadsheets, but I calculate that based off of this, off the date of birth here, if it's given, of course. And anything else? So some things, like again, if these are always going to be the same, what you could do to save people time, what you could do here, I'm trying to think. It's on the desktop, and it is under cert master. So to save time, what you could do, the things that are not going to change tomorrow, you could hard code this in the master certificate and save it. So if I know that the vaccination date is always going to be 10-8-2017, then I can just remove this key and just put that in. Or 17. And the same thing with the vax expires, I could replace that with the actual date that I want. So just like with product name is Defensor, it's always going to be Defensor across everything. So, something you might want to do, same thing like manufacturer name, if you're always going to have the same manufacturer, then just replace that. If you're always going to be the person who's doing this, the vet stuff, then you might just want to go ahead and put your name in here and your vet license so people don't have to even worry about those particular fields. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and here, let me show you a few things. So right now I have the information put in, and if I close it, it's going to ask me if I want to save it. And the way that I save it is by using the owner's name followed by the animal's name. And if I save it, then it's going to save any of the filled in information. Because if I were to look at this, actually let's do it because I don't want to really save this. So I'm going to say don't save, but all that meant is it's not going to save the replace text. So if I open this up, it's going to look just like the master certificate because it didn't save those substitutions that were made. Okay, So, and what was I going to do? Oh yeah, so explain some of the stuff behind the scenes here. Okay, with the owner stuff, if I fix the owner, I might make that editable by tomorrow if I have time. But if I don't, then what you can do is you'll have to shut down that form that came up. So if I run the form, basically to shut it down, you just click the X button and that'll shut it down. And so now I can enter in the information that was missing in that form. So it kind of sucks, you know. I don't like it doing that way. I don't care. And something like this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Okay, so now if I fire this one back up and I click on Ripley, and I'm not going to see anything here because the owner information, I don't have a form to show you that again. But if I do an update and print again, then basically that information I entered in manually in the spreadsheet is now populated. So there you go with that. I'm trying to think of anything else that's interesting here. With the neutered, basically there's that checkbox that if it's neutered, then it's going to be true here. If it's not checked, I think it's going to be false by default. But then if you also enter in the day, it's going to have this. And so, you know, I don't know how you want that to look. If you go to the master spreadsheet, you might put a dash in between these two or something. I don't know. So just think about how you want those to look, though that probably doesn't matter that much. Okay, so this time I'm going to click save, and just to show that what I can do now is go here and open up that one, and basically that information now has been saved. And like normal, you can do a Control P to print, and so you should have a printer set up. I think my default, that's kind of interesting. Oh yeah, so this is a virtual machine. So you notice I'm running this under Mac, but it's a virtual Windows environment, which I probably should mention here in a second. But if I had a default printer besides a print to PDF, then I could go ahead and print this. And my suggestion on the day would maybe always print 2 hard copies, one to give to the user, or one to give to the customer, and one to keep for ourselves. And the idea there is that if something happens, like somebody's stupid and deletes the spreadsheet, or if it gets corrupted somehow, then we always have those hard copies to rely on. And so, okay. So what else? So Ripley talked about new lines. Oh yeah, so maybe the weight. So the weight is 3.9 pounds, but then when that's saved as a decimal equivalent. So when it's actually printed out, you're not going to see pounds and ounces, you're just going to see it in pounds. And so, what did I say, 3.9 is 3.565 pounds. I could round that up a little bit, or I could round it to maybe like 1 decimal place, similar to how yours is doing. So, yeah, so I can change that if needed, if you don't like that many decimal places. Okay, what else? Okay, so let me close this. There's no way, by the way, there's no way to delete animals from here. It'll just get too complicated. And probably what I would do is if Ripley is totally messed up, you can always change the values, but say like you don't, for some reason this really sucks. Well, what you can do is, now that I think about it, I don't like this, because what you could do is you could click the plus button to clear everything off. So you get this. Now you could add Ripley in again, and then you just have 2 Ripleys, probably with the same stuff over here. But I can't imagine what you would change. Maybe it did the wrong owner, but you can change the owner. So if I want to say that Ripley is owned by me, I can update. And now if I click on owner, well, you'll notice that it changed the owner here, but now everything changed. So it's probably not a big deal that you can't delete things. So whatever. And if you had to, you could go down to the spreadsheet level and do this, but I wouldn't suggest that. So I really can't say much. I mean, here, of course, you can modify things here if you wanted to. Probably wouldn't suggest that if things are working correctly. Owners, I'm going to clear all this out when you get it, so you won't see anything in here. Vaccines, I guess I mentioned that. I mean, obviously, when you run it, there's only 1 vaccine per animal, and it seemed to make sense. since the only thing we're doing is microchipping and giving rabies. And so it didn't make any sense to allow multiple rabies for a given animal. The microchipped here, yeah, I might make that a little bit more clear, because having two fields, you're not really sure what you're supposed to enter in here. So I might try to make that so that it actually indicates what you're supposed to enter. But if we do the microchipping, then we can put the microchip number for the animal, and then of course the date is going to be 10-8-2017. And that was interesting. I'm not sure why it's jumping. Oh, I think actually I do know. What I might also do, there's actually multiple lines here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So I might actually make this so that there's a little scroll thing here. So if you probably don't need to add that many comments, whatnot. I'm kind of screwing these up. So one thing that's different than, unlike ASM, if I do make changes all over the place, but then I don't click update or update print, and if I were to go to a different animal, those changes are going to be lost. And I could maybe try to fix that. So like ASM will tell you, hey, something has changed. Do you want to save and leave? But actually it's more effort than I want to go into, because this was really, the idea behind this was a one-off thing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time working on it. So it's probably just think about it. If you change something, click at least update animal, if not update in print. And there you go. I think that's all I have to say about that. So give me any feedback. I know you're not going to have a lot of time to give feedback, but if you do, give me some feedback and I can make some changes. I'm going to give you a version of it now, and then I'm going to probably do some more debugging to make sure it's not going to crash during the event. But anyway, okay.